You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Business owners and entrepreneurs, are you looking to attract premium clients by positioning yourself as an authority leader in your market? Well, today we have the founder of Business Flight Path, Greg, who joins us to tell us more about his entrepreneurial journey and the secrets to success and selling 5 businesses of his own. Greg, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Chris. Good to be here.
Thank you so much. So tell us more about your history in business and entrepreneurship. How did you even get started into doing what you're doing today? I mean, 5 businesses, that's
Mm,
pretty impressive. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, really, I got started in business by accident. I was working in the irrigation industry, and one day my boss and I had a disagreement about my value to his company. And next day I was thinking, well, what am I going to do now? And I had this strange thought. I said, I reckon I can run a business better than that jerk.
It's like the
So,
villain origin story to any business owner. I really hated working for someone else.
yeah. So, yeah, I started up in my own business in competition and was at a bit of a roller coaster ride. I found out I could run a business better than that jerk, but only just by the skin of my teeth after nearly going bankrupt 4 years. I think the key point for me is I had a record year's sales. So the team was growing. I was building a good sized business, but I went to my accountant because our cash flow was horrible. And I went to my accountant and said, John, his name was, what's happening here? What am I doing wrong? And he said, well, Greg, you've had a record year's sales, but you've also had a record loss. And
Not something we typically want to hear from our accountant.
not at all. But I said, oh, John, what do I have to do? And he said, well, you've got to increase your sales and reduce your costs. I said, well, I don't need to be Einstein to know that, but what I need to know is how. And he couldn't really give me the answers to that. And that was probably a seed that was planted way back then that is why I'm doing what I do now. Because after that experience, I went out and I found some people who could help me and I managed to turn that business around. And we went from the brink of bankruptcy to being recognized as one of the leaders in the field in our location in Adelaide, South Australia back then. Eventually sold that business because I had people coming to me and saying, Greg, you seem to be doing pretty well. Can you give us a clue on how to run a business? So I looked at getting into business consulting and sold off the irrigation business and started working as a consultant for a firm, helping small business owners to grow their businesses and to succeed. And during that 4 years I worked for that consulting firm, what I recognized and came to understand was the consulting model was really broken. The typical consultant goes out to deal with a problem that a business owner presents them with. They do an analysis, write up a report, tell them exactly what to do to fix it, and then walk away and say, good luck.
We're just kind of left to their own. They say, here you go.
That's right. Here's what you have to do. Now go and do it. And my experience with that was most of the people that we wrote reports for, I would go back and talk to them 6 months later and say, how's it all going? And they sort of give me a sheepish look and say, oh, that report there's sitting on the filing cabinet gathering dust. We haven't really used it. We're still struggling along. So I decided that wasn't what I was in it for. I really looked back to my experience in my own business and thought, what would someone like me really need to help them succeed in their business? And I left the company I was working for and went out on my own and tried to find the answer to that question, which again wasn't easy. But eventually I got to a point where I was supporting business owners who were just like I was initially. They needed help with understanding how to get clients, so how to get customers, how to manage the cost structure of their business, how to manage their employees, all of those things that I had struggled with myself and really didn't have too many answers for yet. But eventually I had the theory and started to put it into practice and help clients. And eventually they were succeeding. And as that happened, I started growing my own consulting practice. and having to learn how to manage people. I think I'd had a pretty good handle on how to manage costs, but the marketing was probably the biggest challenge of all. And it wasn't easy for me to attract clients or to find clients. Networking was one of the things that we were told to do. And my first job out of school was an accountant. So I much preferred sitting behind a computer than going out networking and trying to talk to strangers. But being an entrepreneur, I got over myself and went out and started to shake hands with people I'd never met and talk to them about business. But I came to discover that that was just a short-term proposition. You can't scale a business by networking and waiting around for referrals. I knew that if I was going to continue to grow my business and not get caught up in this roller coaster ride of up and down sales cycles that a lot of consulting firms experience, they get busy with work. And because we're client focused, we go out and do the work and lose our sight of where the next clients are coming from. So yeah, we get busy delivering and then we deliver the work and look around and say, where is the work coming from now? So back out on the hustings, back out networking, chasing clients, and it just ends up in this endless up and down cycle. And funnily enough, what I've experienced is that a lot of firms end up with the same level of sales year on year. They sort of hit this plateau where that's the limit. The sales revenue last year is the same as this year, and it'll be the same again next year. But month to month during that year, it's up and down like a yo-yo. So it's just a crazy cycle that business owners trap themselves in by their reactive approach to growing a business. And what I discovered was that I had to break out of that cycle and create a system to attract clients that didn't depend on me. And over the journey, I had to actually work out how to build a business that didn't depend on me.
That could be a challenge.
That is a challenge.
Huge challenge.
Well, I don't think most business owners ever get to that point. The biggest challenge, I think, is growing a business that is dependent on the owner. And what I see from most business owners, they actually start a business. And if it does well, if being good at what they do, typically there's a startup. If they get beyond that first stage, first year, you all know the statistics of failures in the first year, but if you can get beyond that and start to grow a business that's reasonably good at doing what it's supposed to do, without having a plan to create a business that works without you, you actually create a business that works because of you. And when the business only works because of you, it can't grow beyond a certain point. There's a limitation of how much you can control, how much you can keep your fingers on the pulse. So what tends to happen is when you employ people, you create this extra dependency. Every new employee that comes on is ultimately dependent on you, because they're coming to you, asking you what to do. How do I do this? What do I do next? And you just create more headaches for yourself, and you create a business that ultimately you can't grow anymore because you can't take any more headaches. And I've often heard potential clients say to me, "No, we don't want to grow our business. It's too much of a headache." And I say, well, if you don't look at how you can grow the business, the headaches you have in the business already will not go away. So I think we've looked at that as potentially the answer to running a business successfully is keep it small, but that's not the real answer. That's just a real cop-out, really. And it's about how to grow a business successfully, how to eliminate the headaches, and that takes some forward focus, some looking beyond the now, looking to where you want the business to be, and really creating what needs to happen. And that means systemizing your marketing so that your marketing works without you to some extent. I mean, you may be involved in some points, but with creating systems, you do the hard work once and then it repeats over and over again. So most business owners aren't prepared to put in that hard work once. So for some reason, they prefer to deal with the headaches all the time and be reactive and keep putting out fires. And they don't have time to create systems. They don't have time to fix the problems. So,
Which
so
seems to be the opposite of what the intended end result wants to be. They don't have the
yeah,
time to put the systems in place, but really they can't afford not to have that time to put those systems in place.
exactly. Yeah. And that was my experience too. I had to decide to take control of my future. And it's a battle because we're all time poor. We've all created a business that depends on us. And if we don't decide to take charge of that and change it, it's just going to continue to be the way it is. So it is an extra burden initially, but it's like anything. Unless you do the work to make the future a possibility, it will always have a future, but the future that we want, we have to learn to make that possible. And that means going above and beyond. I think it's been said that successful people are willing to do the things that unsuccessful people aren't willing to do. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, for most entrepreneurs is to go above and beyond that normal limitation and see it as a short-term exercise to create the business that they want and to create the lifestyle they want. And really that takes deciding what that's going to be like, and then putting in the hard yards for a short time to make it possible. And then once you get that to be possible, it becomes so much easier.
Absolutely. This message has to be resonating with every single listener out there. For those who are business owners, entrepreneurs, struggling to make things work, I feel a lot of the times that maybe when they hear I need to put in the work in order to grow my business, when they hear grow my business, they're not hearing revenue or grow my time freedom. They're hearing grow my headaches, which is the
Mm,
perception that they have. They think that they're going to have to do more of the same. And that's the opposite of what you're trying to create and build within someone's business. You're actually trying to create these systems to just kind of run on autopilot, to have more
mm.
consistency. Within that framework that you're building, is this focused on paid advertising? And is this organic search? Is this more cold outbound? Is there a strategy or is it a little bit of everything?
Well, I think the word strategy is the critical word here. But what I found is that the strategies change depending on the size and stage of the business that you're in. And I've been around in business for a long time now and I've tried everything. And what I've found is getting the tactics at the wrong stage. So putting in tactics that apply at a different stage doesn't work at a particular stage. When your business is smaller and just growing, you can't afford to waste money on advertising. And what I've found is that I've spent money on advertising, and particularly in a service based business, a professional service firm, where we're selling intangibles more than selling products. We don't have something that's tangible that people can see, touch, feel. We're selling something that's a hope and a wish, really. And what I found is you can't market that in the same way. You can't sell it the same way. You can't advertise the same way as a product based business operates. And I've wasted so much money on advertising, paying for advertising, whether it's Facebook ads or Google or SEO or updating websites. And I came to figure that marketing is just like gambling. We throw our money at it and hope to get a payoff. And more often than not, just like gambling, that's money down the drain. So at the smaller stage of business, I had to work out how to do it more organically and how to turn the marketing into a value for the clients in itself. So we can't sell to people. People resist selling. It's just come to a point where we hate being sold. And I think we've had so many bad experiences with people pressuring us and trying to sell to us that we resist selling, but we're open to learning how to solve our problems. So particularly as business consultants or anyone in a professional service, And anyone, even in a plumbing service or accounting service or a hairdressing salon, it's if you can get to the point where you're delivering value in your marketing, if you're helping people solve their problems and educating people about the best solution for their problem, so that we actually can engage people in the buying journey earlier in the process when they're doing the research about finding out what they need, and we're adding value at that point, we become the authority in the market for them. And that's where my strategic approach to what I call now strategic authority marketing is building a system that intersects with the client's buying journey at an early stage in their process, and then delivering value all the way through that process, so that we're actually leading the client by the hand, almost taking them through that journey, giving them what they need, educating them, helping them to understand what the best solution is. And when they see that we offer that solution, they're not going anywhere else at that point. They're just coming along and say, I need your help. How do I start? So, yeah, coming back to the strategy and whether it's paid advertising, organic, the stage of your business determines whether you do it organically or you can advance to more paid strategies. And it really is about escalation. But the thing about the strategy is you've got to prove that the system, the methodology you're using actually sells. You want to prove that you have an offer, that they're willing to pay you money for it. When you prove that organically, then you can scale it with paid advertising.
And all too often, we do one before the other. We think we just need to put money into paid ads, and
Yep.
suddenly throwing money at it will solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the official offer. We don't know what the price point is.
Yep.
We don't know how we're communicating this to our audience just yet, so we can't scale. Again, you're finding the right solution, but at the wrong time, and it's just not the right fit right now. But I
Yeah.
love the focus on value-driven content and providing them answers to questions. You're solving problems. And when people are searching for solutions online, if you're able to be that trusted authority leader, suddenly who wants to learn all about their problems and how to solve them? The comparison is spending 20 to 40 hours learning how to do it and then struggling for 40 hours to actually complete it. Whereas Greg may have the solution where you pay me a fee and suddenly all your problems go away. Wow, that sounds way better than doing all this myself. But for those who don't need it, there are the resources available, which is fantastic.
That's right. It's the best option for the clients, really, because they get to choose how they solve their own problem and whether they need help or whether they just need the free resources. We're offering value as an organization to them. If you've done your marketing correctly, if you've done your basic planning and research about who you serve in your business, there's going to be enough potential clients in the market that you can allow some of them to take your stuff and do it for free. That I've got an abundance mentality. I know there are a lot of people come to me and say, what if they take my book and do it themselves? Well, good on them. If they're good enough to be able to do that, if they're capable enough, well, they're never going to be your client anyway. But there will be enough people who see the value, see your authority, and they'll come to you and say, it's so much quicker to ask you to help us to do this than to try and do it ourselves. So how do we get started? And that makes the selling process so much easier than a traditional approach of advertising. And I see this with a lot of professional firms on their website. Here's who we are. Here's what we do. Come and buy our stuff. The first call to action is get on a call with us and do a free consultation. And so much of the heavy lifting in the sales process is done in one meeting that it's so much hard work to actually make a sale in that process. But when you have clients coming pre-educated, pre-sold, coming to you saying, I think I need what you do. How can we get started? You don't have to sell very much. Being that shy accountant that I told you, I was never a great salesperson. I never expected to ever be involved in selling. And I'm still not the greatest salesperson in the world, but I've created a system that means I don't have to be.
That's fantastic. But it's one of the scariest things in entrepreneurship when we're starting a business is realizing how many hats and positions we need to fulfill and how terrible we can be at a lot of those skill sets. And
Mm,
really quickly, we have to realize, okay, we need to figure this out fast. Otherwise, we're not going to be in business much longer.
that's absolutely right. And you won't be in business for very long if you don't figure it out. So, yeah, building the systems is really critical, but then employing the people that are better than you to run those systems is the next level. Being able to have that level of leadership and grow in your leadership capability to embrace people and allow them to do their thing when they're better at it than you. But you've got to provide people with the framework, the systems. You can't employ someone and tell them, I'm not very good in this area. Can you build the system for me and make it work for us? You're throwing people in the deep end and they usually struggle with that. So I see this a lot. Small business owners not great at sales, so they employ a top salesperson from another firm, bring them in, give them a car. Or in the old days, maybe don't need to do that now, but car and a phone, and spend a lot of money setting this person up and go out and sell for us. And they are dismal failures. So was this top-notch person in another firm coming to you? Whose fault is it? Is it the fault of the person because they didn't know what they were doing, or is it your fault because you didn't set them up correctly and have the right systems in place first? So, I've seen setting up the systems, creating the environment, the structure, the frameworks to allow people to be successful is the critical part of growing your business.
Oh, absolutely. When we are trying to hire out these positions, we need to make sure that we have that framework put in place. Sometimes we'll rely on their expertise to bring that in. But again, it's up to us as the business owners, entrepreneurs, the leaders, in order to give them the tools, to give them the resources, to have that built out first and not expect them to just suddenly be thrown into a role and be super great at it
Yeah.
without the resources backing them.
Mm. And I think that applies in whether you're employing someone in-house or you're outsourcing part of the business. You've got to delegate, not abdicate. And I think that's the critical part. And when you delegate what needs to be done, you've got a system for how to do it, and then you're delegating it to someone else to run your system. But I've seen so many people abdicating responsibility for it and saying, I don't know how to do this. We'll outsource it to a marketing consultant or someone who's supposed to know how to do it. And then it turns into a dismal failure. I've had that experience. I've learned the hard way in that we employed marketing consultants to try and help us get clients. And that was another part of the gambling experience of throwing money at a problem and hoping that it paid off. The consultants didn't know our business as well as we did. And it was different to other businesses. So they had to start from a long way back to even hope to be successful. So when it came to and I knuckled down and worked out the systems. And being the sort of person I am, this quite systems oriented, as you can probably tell by now. I unpacked what was working in our marketing and what wasn't working, what worked in our sales process and what didn't work, and really just put the pieces together so that we had a repeatable process that gave us consistency and predictability about sales results. And then when we systemized that, we were able to scale it. And we didn't need external consultants to do it for us anymore. We employed people and delegated that responsibility in-house and made it work very well.
That is fantastic. Now, Greg, for anyone listening who really is excited about everything that you're describing here, what are some resources either online? Is this YouTube videos, either podcast or a book, or maybe a resource from your website for people who want to kind of dip their feet into systematizing their business, their process, into learning more and taking those next steps?
Well, you can actually find all of those resources if you do a search for Greg Roworth on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook, or go to my website at businessflightpath.com. There are some free resources there, some ebooks and video trainings. But I think for anyone who's really wanting to and is serious about growing a business, I've got a book called Cracking the Code, which is available at crackingthecodebook.com.au. And that's a $7 Australian dollars. So it's cheaper in the US. So very inexpensive way to start, but you can get hold of that book online at crackingthecodebook.com.au. And that goes through the process that we've been talking about today, how to create a business that works for you, not because of you.
That's fantastic. Now, what is on the roadmap for Business Flight Path for Greg yourself? What's on the roadmap for 2024 and beyond? What are the goals? What are you striving to achieve this year and next year?
Mm. Yeah, good question. Really, for me, it's about taking the business that I've recreated from the last one that I sold. And because we've had so many differences now with COVID, and my business has gone from being a face to face consultancy firm to being an online coaching consulting practice. And for me, it's about systemizing everything, taking the ideas in my head and creating a structured course content. So I already have some online training programs that people can join with some one-on-one support and group coaching support. So it's about building out the curriculum and extending that process for me and freeing myself up from having to be working one-on-one with clients all the time. What I'm discovering is that people get so much value out of a group format that they're getting very smart people who are going through the process together, and they can all contribute to each other's success. And it doesn't take so much of my effort. And sometimes they come up with better ideas than I have. So it's a great environment for people to learn and to work together to grow their businesses. So yeah, my focus is really building a business that actually works without me. Again, I'm practicing what I preach and doing the work now. Now's where the hard work's going in to create those systems so that after this year, hopefully I can start to take some of my time back and have the business working in the background and making me money, supporting the clients, and actually expanding my ability to impact more clients and give out value to more people without draining so much of my own time and energy and resources in the process.
Oh, absolutely. I love that, Greg. It's funny because we all love the one-on-one work with our clients because
Mm,
it's that human connection, the relationships that we're building. We really want to stick with them just as if they were a friend or a family member. But of course, as time goes on, in order to help more people, in order to create a certain level of revenue, you need to change things. You need to pivot. But I
mhm.
love the group coaching premise because you're bringing all these people together. They're accountability buddies. You're just collaborating and sharing information, and how empowering that can be for other business owners to see other
Mm.
challenges, other wins, other successes, and just bring that together.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I can tell them something and they think, well, it's easy for you. But when their colleagues are going through the same process, and in my process, there's some people a bit ahead of others, and they can talk to each other and say, yeah, I had this problem too. And I found it a struggle just like you are, but I kept going and I managed to succeed and break through that barrier. So that peer support is probably even more valuable when they can see that, well, it's not just someone who's supposed to be the expert who it should be easy for, but yeah, someone who's a battler like me has managed to do it as well. And if they can do it, I can probably do it too.
That's incredible. Now, for anyone listening, we're going to have all of the links and descriptions available down in the show notes and the comments so that you can get connected with Greg and find his website and businesses online and get connected with him. Now, Greg, any last word of advice for any entrepreneur, business owner out there? What is one piece of advice that you would give to them so that they can start taking action and making change in their business?
Well, there's a lot of things to think about there. And I think it's probably a tough time for a lot of people. There's talk of recessions and it's difficult for business owners. And often we think, how am I going to get through? Like Winston Churchill once said, if you're going through hell, keep going. It's the same in business. If you're struggling, you just got to keep going. I think for me, the biggest turning point for me was the depths when I went to my accountant and he couldn't give me the help, but I kept looking for help. And I think you can't do business on your own. You know, it's something that we all need help with. So I think the best thing I can suggest is that you look for people who have been there before you, have done what you're looking to be able to do, and pick their brains and get advice. And even if you have to pay for it, it's money well spent.
Absolutely. The things that we can enact in our business today that are going to help us in the future, we don't need to struggle. Of course, we're always
Mm.
going to have challenges and we need to persist through them. However, at the end of the day, other people have gone through very similar situations as us, and we need to reach out to them for support and use them as a resource because we're all here to help each other. Greg, thank you so much for your time and everything that you're doing for these businesses. It's incredible to see. Congratulations on all your success, and we appreciate you coming on our podcast.
No, thanks, Chris. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much.